Hi, and welcome to my Classic Licks Old School Blues Lessons for the month of July 2015. And this month we're going to take a look at the guitar playing of one of the all-time greats and also one of the most underrated, underappreciated blues guitar players in my humble opinion. That is Earl Hooker from Chicago. And Earl Hooker, the more I got into studying his playing and listening to his recordings, the more I realized this guy was an amazing guitar player. And he could play all kinds of stuff. And this lesson series that I'm going to do here is just going to touch on some of the ideas that I understand, that I picked up. A lot of things I listened to, I didn't really get what he was playing and didn't want to spend too much time studying it. But I do have just a ton of ideas for you, a literal gold mine of guitar playing, blues guitar playing ideas that I want to share with you. Divided the series into 4 lessons. The first one will cover double stops and Earl Hooker's use of double stops. Then we'll look at some of his various ideas, single string style, all sorts of things. And then the third lesson will focus on the rhythm playing, chords and use of chords and different rhythms. And then the final lesson will look at his slide playing. And I've never played Earl Hooker style slide before, and I've sat and listened to it for about the last month and a half trying to figure it out and listen to it. And I'll share with you what I think he's doing and show you the things that I've learned. And anything you can tell me about any facet of his playing would be appreciated. So let's get started. This first lesson, we're going to look at what I call double stop patterns, because one of the characteristics of Earl Hooker's playing is a lot of times during a solo he'll play these patterns of double stops. And he does it in so many of his songs that I think this is worth looking at. And many of the ideas that he uses are pretty simple, but he does it in such a tasteful way and he mixes it up so much. It's really comes from this tune called Off the Hook, and that'll be our first lick that we're going to look at. This one I'm going to play all the way through the 12 bars and show you how it works. It's in the key of A, and we're going to play this lick over the 1, the 4, and the 5 of the song, basically the same lick, with a couple variations. So let me play it all the way through one time, and then we'll break it down and talk about it. This is from Off the Hook in the key of A. He throws the 7th chord in there at the end, but I just put that in there to show you where it ends. I don't think he does that, but that's it. Now what he's doing is he's starting here over the 1, and he's playing this double stop lick, which probably sounds familiar to you. If you check out my song breakdown lesson for this month, I show you a tune called I Don't Play by Little Walter, and he uses a very similar lick. But Earl Hooker uses this as part of his solo. And he goes through and plays it almost exactly the way I did. So he starts out on the 7th fret of the 4th string, which is an A, and then he's going to go with his first finger on the 5th fret, 2nd and 3rd string, and hammer on his 2nd finger. This is a very common blues guitar lick. And he's going to pick that twice. It's like that. When he does that, he's picking both the 2nd and 3rd strings. Then he's going to flatten out his ring finger on the 7th fret, 2nd and 3rd strings. Then he's going to slide in this position, double stop position. He starts with his 2nd finger on the 7th fret of the 2nd string, his ring finger on the 8th fret of the 3rd string, and then slides up 1 from the 7th and the 8th to the 8th and the 9th. Which is an A7. So that whole lick, like that. Then he comes back to that position on the 7th fret, 2nd and 3rd string, and then hammers on to that double stop. Same one we did before. So again, the whole thing. That's what you should be playing. Play a little slower there. And he plays that 2 times. And then he mixes up the rhythm by just doing this. So he's using all the same positions, but he's not coming back to that bass note, which is kind of cool. And then he's going to go over the 4, which is up here at the 10th to the 12th frets, the D, and just plays the same thing. And then back to the 1, the A. Then when he goes over the 5, he's coming up here to the E, playing over the E, first position bar chord, but this time he does this. So he's playing it a little differently. So instead of sliding this, he's doing this instead. So he's just changing the way he's picking it. So over the 5, so he's over the E. That is just the same thing he was doing up here over the 1. Check the tab. And then to wrap it up, something like that. So that is the first example of what I call a double stop pattern from Earl Hooker. And that is really a cool thing. And I'm actually starting out this lesson with the more complicated examples. I didn't mean to do that. It's just the order that I wrote them down as I was listening to the songs. And so you'll see as we get through this, the easier stuff is coming up. That's pretty tough. The second one is from the same song, and this is also from Off the Hook, and this is in the key of A. This one is really kind of tough. I've never played this one before. I just learned this, so let me see if I can play it and show you. And if all fails, I'll just break it down and show you one part at a time. It is the second or third solo verse. He plays this as part of the solo. Now sometimes Earl Hooker will play the single strings, like most Chicago blues players, but again, one of his really defining characteristics was the way he used double stops to make his solos, and this one is really cool. So it goes like this. Let me play it again in the key of A. Last part I kind of threw in because I forgot what he did. So really a cool solo. I don't think I got that exactly right all the way through, but on the tab I did. So starts out with this double stop, almost sounds like a Chuck Berry thing. On the 5th fret, 1st and 2nd strings, same position we used in the last one, but then he's going to go to that A on the 7th fret of the 4th string, and then the double stop there, which we've used before. Does that, and then he goes, so that same position we used in the last one, which is really pretty awesome. Then this part is really tough. I think he does that. Okay, here it is right here. That's what he does. And he goes back into that. So let's break that down. I don't know if I can play that full speed for you. But what he's doing is going to this double stop, another common Chicago blues thing, where he's got his pinky on the 8th fret of the 1st string and his ring finger on the 7th fret of the 2nd string. And I'm using my 1st finger, fretting the 1st and 2nd strings of the 5th fret to kind of steady things. It sounds like he does this. So I'm going from the 1st and 2nd strings at the 5th fret to the 2nd and 3rd strings at the 7th fret, 2nd and 3rd strings at the 5th fret. So it's like this. Then he does this chord. When we do his Earl Hooker's rhythm chords later, we'll talk about this, but this is like a D7. So So I've got my second and my third finger basically in the D shape. That's a D double stop, and I'm putting in this note, which is the the 8th fret of the first string. Then I've got my second finger on the 10th fret of the second string and my ring finger on the 11th fret of the third string. When I first listened to it, I thought he was playing maybe a 7th. But the more I listen to it, he's doing something like this. And then after he does this, he goes back to that leg. Then he does the chord again. Really odd. And then he goes back to this. And he ends that before he goes to the 5 with a little variation. Something like that. And then the 5, he does something like this, where he's starting on the 5th fret of the second string, and then he's sliding to the 9th fret of the second string, then the 7th fret of the first string. That's what I think I hear, but it might be something a little different. That was kind of hard for me to hear. So he's basically playing over this 5. That double stop there is an E, which is our 5 chord in the 1, 4, 5 progression in A. So he starts it out. And then for the 4, he comes down here to the 3rd fret of the second string and does the same thing into the D. And then wraps it up. So that whole 5, 4, 1. And I may again not have that melody exactly right. I got to listen to that again. And I don't think he plays anything after that. It just kind of wraps up. So that whole sequence is really based on this really cool double stop pattern. Which is kind of neat to play. So that is the second example of a double stop pattern. Listen to the song off the hook and you'll see what I'm trying to play here. Again, I just learned that myself, and so I'm just sharing this with you. If you see anything that I missed, make sure you let me know. The third example of a double stop pattern from Earl Hooker's playing comes from an instrumental tune called Earl's Boogie Woogie. He uses the same instrumental backing for another tune called Moving On Down the Line. It's basically the same song, that one has lyrics, one has vocal, the other one doesn't. But in both tunes he does this instrumental break, which is a solo based on the double stop pattern, very similar to what we just did. It's in the key of E. So here's my first position E bar chord. So we're going to be playing up here between the 13th fret and the 9th fret. And let me play it for you one time and then we'll break it down. There you go, same thing. That same kind of Chuck Berry type thing. And he's just leading into it, sliding into this note, which is an E, because we have an E chord, second position bar chord right here. It's the 9th fret of the 3rd string. And he starts out sliding into it twice, from the 8th to the 9th. And then between the 11th and the 9th, he's going to go back and forth. And he's starting this one out with that double stop on the 12th fret. Just like we've been doing before. Check the tab. And he goes to the 4. This time, instead of this, he's just playing the 12th fret, 2nd and 3rd string. So instead of, he's playing. Then back to this. Now in some versions, I think in one version, he starts playing a, and on others, he keeps playing the same pattern all the way to the turnaround. And then ends it there. So you can do what you want. And the tab, I put the first version. So let me play that all the way through again. Then goes into the next verse. So that is another example of a double stop pattern. So when I say double stop pattern, meaning he's playing the same basic riff and adjusting it just a little bit when he gets to the 4 or the 5, but really it's the same type of thing. So that again is from an instrumental called Earl's Boogie Woogie. That's on an album, Two Bugs and a Roach, which is one of his more famous ones. Next example comes from one of his great instrumental tunes called The Hucklebuck, and this is pretty much the same thing. We're going to move to the key of G. And I did a lesson, I've done a separate lesson on the Hucklebuck, so if you want to see this taught there, you can go learn that whole tune. But one of the first solo verses, he does this double stop pattern, something like this. That's the melody of the song. So what I'm doing, instead of doing or that, I'm just staying on the 2nd and 3rd string. That hammer on from the 3rd fret, got my first finger over the 2nd and 3rd strings, hammering on my 2nd finger to the 4th fret of the 3rd string, and then getting the 2nd string. And then I'm going to get the 5th fret, 2nd and 3rd strings. Vary that up, mix it up, then over the 4, he's just going back and forth between the 3rd fret and the 5th fret on the 2nd and 3rd string. And that's how he plays it for the Hucklebuck. But you could play a whole solo. Just using those rhythms, and that's what he kind of does. When I went over the 5, I just moved everything up 2 frets, which is over the 5. That's my 2nd position, D, which would be my 5 if I'm playing in G. So that is from the Hucklebuck. The next example of a double stop, we're going to move away from that pattern, this kind of pattern that we've seen in all the examples so far. And I'm going to show you some just different stuff that he does, a couple different things. One of my favorite Earl Hooker licks, checking my tuning, is one that he does in Earl's Boogie Woogie and also in the tune Moving On Down the Line. And he does this lick in the key of E, so we're moving to E now. That. So what he's doing, he's using this lick, sliding from the 3rd fret to the 5th fret on the 2nd string while playing the open 1st string, the open E. And the basic lick is so 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And he slides it back down, or back down to the 3rd fret. Then open 2nd string, 2nd fret of the 3rd string, and then just a quick hammer on the 1st fret of the 3rd string, like that. Then when he goes over the 4, he's just going to mix that up a little bit, same thing, to there, and then he's going to go to the 3rd fret, 2nd fret of the 3rd string, and it sounds like he just hits it open. Then back over the 4, which is over the A7, and then over the 5. When he gets to that part, he's doing this. He plays something like that, where he's sliding from the 2nd fret with the first finger, second fret of the second string, and he's got his first finger, his second finger on the third fret of the third string, and he's sliding and picking the third to the second to the third. Now, one version I've heard him do with a chord turnaround. Something like that, or you can go back to that. And wrap up the verse. Now that little lick, I've heard him do that in a couple different tunes, but that's a really cool Earl Hooker pattern. Again, it's a pattern. He just keeps playing that over the 4, over the 1. Same basic riff, just played over and over again, which is really rhythmic, really kind of cool. Now the last example of a double stop that I have written out here, I could do some more, I know of some more, but these are some of the basics, enough to get you started. Looking through my notes, there's a tune, he does a series of like Latin tunes, instrumentals, where he does this one basic lick with double stops. It's really one of my favorites. It's so simple, but it's so pretty, and it's so cool. And if you want to play one of these Earl Hooker instrumentals, just gives you an idea how you can make a really cool melody. It is from a tune called Guitar Rumba, and I think it's in the key of A. It sounds like it could be in B flat too. And the basic melody of the song is a rumba beat like this. And so he goes, it's a 1 and a 5. He only plays on the 1 and the 5, so he goes, actually let's do it in B flat, because I did the tab in B flat. So let's do it in B flat. So you're going to hear that. And what he's playing goes like this. Let me just play this for you one time so I don't confuse you too much. And he's playing it. Playing it over that. So one more time. And he goes into, that's from Guitar Rumba. I don't play that. Just started learning that tune. So what I'm doing, since I'm in A, actually B flat, is I'm going to find my second position bar chord, B flat, which is down here, up here, where I've got my first finger, the 13th fret, getting the second, or the 4th and the 5th strings. Then I've got my ring finger flattened out on the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th strings. So that position, just over that, I'm going to play a double stop. With my first finger on the 13th fret of the 1st string, my second finger on the 15th fret of the 2nd string. And that's my main thing. And I start out. Then I'm going to bring it up here, or down here, with my first finger on the 10th fret of the 1st string, my second finger on the 11th fret of the 2nd string, and that is a B flat. Double stop. So the whole first part, and then we're going to go back to that. Then we're going to take that and move it down 2 frets. So my first finger is on the 11th fret of the 1st string, and my ring finger is on the 13th fret of the 2nd string. Then we do that again. And then we go back, and then end up with that. So we've got 3 positions. And he's just doing that Latin melody. He does this on 2 or 3 of his instrumental tunes. So one more time, kind of slow. I plan on doing a video on the instrumental Guitar Rumba as soon as I learn it all the way through and get the hang of playing it. But that's another idea from Earl Hooker's playing, is he would make these melodies with the double stops. And usually it's kind of that rumba, Latin type beat that he has going with the bass. And it skips, goes very quickly, twice, from the 1 to the 5. And stays on the 5, back to the 1. Again, back to the 5. And that's, he uses that for 2 or 3 different instrumentals, including guitar rumba. So there's some examples of what I call double stop patterns, and that is one of the defining characteristics, in my opinion, of Earl Hooker's playing. It's something he does that you don't hear. You hear some guys do it a little bit here, a little bit there, but Earl Hooker does it in quite a few of his songs where he plays a whole solo verse using double stops, and I really think that's kind of cool. And it's simple. A lot of the ideas are pretty easy to play. And so if you're just getting started into this kind of guitar playing, it's a nice break from the single string bends and screaming guitar that you hear so many blues guys play. I mean, this is a real tasteful way to add to your playing. So that is the first lesson in my series on the playing of Earl Hooker. When I come back, lesson number 2, we're going to just kind of randomly go through and look at some of the cool ideas from his solo playing, and a lot of single string stuff and bends and all sorts of things. If you have any questions, comments, let me know. I hope you like this lesson, and I hope you like all the rest that are coming afterward. And I'll see you again soon.